Ms. Renata, please, can you give me the permission to record, please?
Okay, I'm gonna make you the host. I'm gonna make you the host.
Yeah, share my screen.
Gaita, I'm gonna make you the host.
Okay, no problem.
Okay. Okay, Gaita, please, did you ever try to disable the waiting room?
The what?
The waiting room.
Yes, you can disable it. Once you are the host, you go to the list of participants. Okay, you will see the options: invite, mute all, and the other one there is three dots. Three dots after that. So you can click on the three dots. You will see that for you the waiting room is always enabled. So that's why people have to come. You have to admit them one by one. But if you log in first, you can disable it. So just go to participant and you click on the option after mute all. You will see that you can just disable it.
Okay.
I think even by default you can do that. And just there's some setting you can from that by default. Accessibility, where is it? Okay, so enable participant has joined or left the video was only. So yeah, I can see that your default parameters were set to host only. Yeah.
Parce que le sol bébé de la maison.
Yeah. Right. Let me just disable it, enable it, disable the waiting room. Co-host privilege. Okay. Missing something. All right. Can you all see my screen?
5 on 5.
All right, thank you. So we'll be starting in 1 minute. I want to start at 6:10. And yeah, I gave 10 minutes for those who were late. So all right. So today I will introduce the first project because whatever we have been doing so far in the past, I usually call them pre-projects, okay? Because those are not projects. Today we are introducing Oracle Data Guard, and that is the first project among 4 existing projects in Brontech. So it means that after this one, you guys will still have to go through 3 more projects. Okay, upgrade patching, Oracle Golden Gate, and Oracle Rack. This project, I can tell you, is one of the most important projects. Okay, all these projects are important, but this one is one of the frequently asked. Okay, so more than 90% of the time, every single interview you have Oracle Data Guide. So it means that it's mandatory for you to understand this topic. It's not an option. So, and as I always told other people in the past, just because now we are doing everything virtually, but when we were going to class, to the classroom, some people who are working will always come in and give you advices and tell you and prepare you, okay, ahead of the time, and to know what you will meet in the future or what you can encounter in the future when it comes to project or when it comes to interviews. Now, most of them, when you are having classes, they are not available, but it's okay. So whatever they have been saying so far, I will just tell you guys the same thing. Whatever you learned so far in the past, okay, GB1, GB2, and performance tuning is already something you learn. Oracle 12c, I can take it as a base. Whatever you learned so far are really part of activities, are really part of database administrator daily activities. Okay, so you can be exposed to that. You find yourself being exposed to that when you are working. RMAN backups, flashback, user creation, password reset, security, TGE. Okay, so but it has a very huge percent. Even in the interview room, those topics are still important. Some of them, most of them. But now we are heading to project, and if somebody wants to hire you in a company, okay, most of the time, unless the person is hiring you as a production support, it means that maybe they want to add a new, okay, port support GBA, or maybe the existing GBA retired. Most of the time, when somebody wants to hire you in a company, they want to know what you know, which technology you are comfortable with, and most of the time, which project you have done, because they hire you because they need more hands on, you know, maybe they want more assistance. Maybe they are trying to implement a major project and they want someone to help. They want you to assist based on what they can see on your resume. So that's why projects have a very, very big impact in any single interview you have it. Very, very huge impact. So and Data Guard is one of them. Out of all the other projects, out of the 4 projects, I have 2 projects that can guarantee you 100% that more than 95% you will have them in an interview. This one and the last one, Data Guard and Rack. The other one will come as well, but it depends on the interviewer. But most of the time, they want to make sure you understand these. Okay. It doesn't mean other topics are not important, but it just means that this one are frequently asked, and you almost never miss Data Guard. So that's why we always have to start with a lot of energy, and we have to be aware of, you know, how important these projects are. And now moving forward, if you were not doing it before, you have to get this habit from now onward. Any error you encounter on any single project should be documented, or even if you find an error somewhere, or you have a friend who is working on Data Guard in a real environment, and your friend faced an issue, try to ask your friend how he or she faced that issue and document it. Because an interview, whenever you have to get into project, any interview, most of the time they will ask you the type of issue you faced when you were working on that technology. So any error you are having, you are encountering, any error you are facing, any, whatever you resolve, document it. If it sounds too easy, okay, sometimes you let me know, you let your classmate know, and maybe sometimes it might not be useful, but most of the time we tell you that every single error you will encounter while configuring data guard will be important. So from now onward, make good documentation. Okay, document your steps and keep them somewhere. Document your errors and keep them somewhere, because that will help you every single project. What I will be providing today, just a small. I have just some couple of slides, but if you want more resources, I showed you guys Canvas. Okay, you can go on Canvas. You will find additional resources. Okay, and also additional. No, we have more document. We have some documentations there, even for the implementation part. You can find it as well on Canvas. So I would recommend you guys to go there if maybe you are not getting some concept, or get to me and ask any question you have. Okay, I will try my best to answer them. If not, together we look for the answer. Okay. So, all right. So I wanted to set some ground now. We can start with the project itself. So, and before that, I want to make a small story. Okay, I want to take just a common scenario you guys are really familiar with before I can jump straight into what data guard is and how important it is for us, GBA or users or customers or a company. This example, I want to take an example. Okay. Let's assume that you are living in some areas. Okay, I know you have some areas in California. Okay, where sometimes you can have some earthquakes, earthquake, natural disasters. You also have some other areas where you have floodings, other areas where you have, tsunamis, all those natural disasters you guys know. Let's take earthquake. Let's assume that area is a very dangerous area. And now you are a new businessman, okay? You are businessman or businesswoman. So you have your company based in that area. Maybe before you were not aware of the fact that that area is is not a good area for you to build a company like that. You were not prepared of the fact that anytime you can have an earthquake, right? So you build your company, physical company, okay? That means it has a physical location. In my example, this example, I assume you don't have cloud, okay? So we assume that you are a company and you buy servers, and those servers, you have to put them in a location, okay? A physical location, called data center. And yeah, that's where your company resides, in California. Okay, so that's where you make your business. That's where everything is. So if users want to buy things from you, maybe you are selling stuff online. So they can just order online and they will get what they need from you. Now let's assume now that for any reason, if you have a natural disaster, if it's predictable, okay, of course, you will have some time to carry your servers and go. But when it comes to the infrastructure, you'll be losing a lot. Okay, because the location was physical. So you can maybe you save the servers, but you cannot save the world. Okay, you cannot carry the company and go with that. So you will be losing, but you will not be losing data, right? But if it was not forecast, that means you were not aware of that, just a surprise. okay, or maybe a big outage or that earthquake or whatever happened. Since you do not have enough time to move your server from one location to another one, more likely you will lose a lot of information. Of course, you will try to save yourself first, and even your employees try to save themselves. So more likely in this scenario, you may lose some servers because you cannot carry them that fast, okay? If it's already there, you just have to lose those servers and save your own life. So in this particular scenario, the servers are destroyed, okay? Let's assume the earthquake was very bad. It hit your company and you lost the machine, you lost the infrastructure. What happened to your customers? Your customers won't be able to order, right? Because the server is down, that everything is down. Okay, so you may need more time. You can even close your company, okay? Because you may need more time to buy new servers. If maybe by chance you save the backup, you may need some time to use those backup to reconstruct databases. You need some time, so it can last from weeks to months, or even years, or maybe you are discouraged to just close the company, the business. And what about customers? After a week, they will try to buy or connect. They won't be able to do that. After a month, most of the time, some customers are not patient. When option A is not working, they will try option B. So more likely, you will lose a lot of customers. Maybe you can even lose all of them because you are no longer operating. So you can see here that because of a natural disaster, your data was not available to customers every time. Customers do not want to understand that your server are down. Some customers don't even know what is a server. Some of us here, before we came to Bronte, did not even know that behind an application we are using, there might be a server. It can be running on top of a server. We did not know the concept of server before we came here. Some of us, right? So the customer do not want to understand it. The customer doesn't know that there is somebody behind the scene who should make sure that the database is always available. The customer doesn't care about it. But the customer, if I want the shoe, I just have to connect and buy my shoe. Okay. If it's not available and I need it right away, I will check somewhere else. Okay. And I will buy it from another vendor. Or I can even get my car and go to the store, physical store, and buy it from there. So you can see now for the customer to get satisfied, the application the customer is accessing should be available every time. And we want your bank application to be available every time. You want your WhatsApp application to be available every time. Some applications are very important to you. So you want that whenever I want to open this application, it can be open. You don't want to hit an application and it tells you the maintenance or it's not working. Okay. So the customer wants high availability. And because of natural disaster that you cannot prevent, or outages, like you have an outage, that's something you cannot prevent because sometimes you can have an outage, right? You can have those machines that can blow up, or whatever you have an issue with the wire, anything. Sometimes you can have outage for any reason in your apartment or your house. But that was not predictable, but it happened. So they need some time to fix it. So because there are some events we cannot predict, and that can really harm a business and affect, your customers, Oracle came up with a solution. Well, that was the first reason why Oracle came up with this solution called Oracle Data Guard. So Data Guard is just a solution. That was the primary reason why it was created. It was an Oracle solution for disaster recovery. That was the primary reason. Later on, we started using Data Guard for other things. But that was the primary reason why Oracle decided to develop this product. Okay. And now, don't think that Data Guard is just something that if you are not working on Oracle, you will never face it. And anywhere else, if maybe they will not give the name data guard, but other technologies have a structure like that. So it means if you understand how data guard works, you can understand how similar configuration on SQL Server works, or similar configuration on Postgres works, or similar configuration on MongoDB works, Cassandra, GB2, all those other technology, because all of them, they have similar thing. Like it doesn't, maybe it might not work exactly like data guard, but they have those type of configuration to ensure data availability. So coming back to to our example, okay, with a natural disaster or earthquake. So now Oracle came up with DataGuard as a high availability solution to to help customers to help customers so that they can deal with natural disaster and ensure data availability. Okay, in case of in case anything happens. Okay, anything you could not predict happens. So how does it work basically with Oracle Data Guard? On GB2 or GB1, you guys perform cloning. Okay. Cloning for you were taking one database, you clone it. You guys perform cold cloning, hot cloning, using Araman or whatever. You guys know that. Okay. That's how you guys are here. But with that cloning, if you remember, you will clone the database, but the clone is there and the production is there. So there won't be any relationship later on, right? After you clone. The clone and the database and the source database itself at some point could be different. It can become different. Why? Because the production database can be receiving new data. Okay. And those new data coming in the production, the clone won't be aware of that because there is no more relationship between the clone and the production. You're just cloning for any reason, maybe refresh or testing purpose and so on. So now, unlike that type of architecture you guys are familiar with, DataGuard, it works a little bit similar to, it's a type of cloning, okay? So it means DataGuard, instead of having one physical location where you can find your database, now my businessman or businesswoman, we can have another physical location, okay? And on the other physical location now, okay, the database can also be running there. So a clone of the production database will be run in that location, such a way that if the source database fails, the other one will be available. But now, how does it work really? The clone is not a regular clone. The clone is an updatable copy of the production. What do I mean by updatable copy? It means that even after you clone the production database, after you clone it, right, any data coming in the production will go in that clone. So it is still updated whenever you are performing any transaction in the production. So now, if I have the database, my database in California, and I have that updatable copy, okay, in Maryland, and my customers are accessing the database that is in California, right? They are adding or updating data. The database that is present here in Maryland, we also receive those changes. So every time the database in California and the database in Maryland could be in sync. They must not be in sync, but they could be in sync. It depends on the scenario, but they can be in sync for any reason. And I will tell you why they can be in sync or they might not be in sync, okay? So I will tell you the scenarios when we move on. So now with this configuration, if now there's a natural disaster, okay, the earthquake hits California, those users automatically can be transferred to Maryland, or you can do it manually. So you see now that because I have a copy of the source database located in a different geographical location, so if my source database fails, users will be transferred to another database and they can proceed from there. So the downtime they may have is just when they are switching from my production to their other database, and it can take seconds, couple of seconds. Instead of having the database, instead of having them wait till you bring the production back up, okay? It's time consuming. So that is how now DataGuard will be working. So whatever is happening in the source database, all those changes will go to the clone, okay, or to the copy, okay. But if something happening to the copy, it will not come back to the source database, okay. We'll talk about that one as well. So basically, that's how it works, okay. So now you can see now that with a configuration like that, you don't need to spend a lot of time building a server. While users are in Maryland, you take your time and you fix the servers. You build everything while they're in Maryland. Okay? They will not know they are in Maryland. They may have some performance impact, of course, because maybe the distance is farther than the previous data center. But at least they'll be able to access the data. That is basically how it works. Okay? Now you have a copy of a production in a different geographical location to make sure that in case the production is not working, then my users can be redirected to their target location. And Oracle gives name to each of the configurations. So the source location, Oracle will call it primary. So that means the database you used to create one or more standby, one or more clone, which we call primary, and the clone or the copy you created from the primary is called standby. So now, if during the course I'm talking about primary and standby, you should know that the primary is the database you used to create the standby, and the data in the standby is the database you created from the primary. So let's not forget that we can have more than one standby. So it means my businessman can have, after the company is growing fast, may decide to have more standby. So that means you may decide to have a copy in Maryland and another copy in Chicago, or even in Europe. Why not? So you can decide to have as many standby as you want. But the reality is something else. You almost never see a company with more than 2 standby. And I will explain later. So basically, that is how it basically works. Okay, with Oracle DataGuard. Okay, so what else do I have to say about this? Okay, guys, before I proceed, any question? You know what I just said?
So I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So what, in the case of the disaster and you switch the database, let's just say you switch the server from the secondary to the standby. So how do we call the at that level? Which one is the primary? Which one is the primary and which one is the standby?
Okay, if you have how many standby? In case you have how many standby?
If you have like, let's just say like 1.
Okay, 1 primary, 1 standby. That means you have 1. Okay. So after if the primary fails for any reason, right? There is 2 options. You can set it up. You can set the whole transition to be automatic. So you can set up some parameters so that automatically transaction will be redirected to the standby. without you having to touch anything. Or you may decide to do it manually. So that means you yourself, you will command to you connect to the command prompt or to a tool called Data Gap Broker that we'll be talking about as well to perform the whole transition. So now that you perform the whole transition just means you are now redirecting the application to another database. Okay. So once the application goes now to the other database, that database will become the new primary. Okay. It becomes a new primary. And the one that was primary before but failed will become the new standby. So we call that whole transition because at the time of failure, the primary becomes the standby and the standby becomes the primary. And it will work the same. So now that the user switch, to the standby, and that standby became the new primary, okay? And you are fixing the old primary. Once you bring the old primary back online, you have to switch back. You have to bring the users back to that primary. Why do we need to do that? Because it has always been proven that users will have a better experience whenever the servers are around, okay? The servers are nearby. It's the same example as your Wi-Fi. The closer you are from your box, better performance you will have, okay? Fast, this internet speed will be fast. But if you go further, you have low internet speed. That is how it is. So it means that customers will always have a better experience whenever the data center is not that far from them. If there's a server is a couple of miles from you, you have a better experience than if a server is thousands of miles from you or hundreds of miles from you. So that is why even after you resolve the issue, that means the production fell and transactions were redirected to the standby. After you fix that production server, you have to bring them back. Okay, and you will give some name to that. That makes sense? So you have a whole change. So the one that I was calling standby before will become primary. And the one that I was calling primary before that fell will become the new standby.
Thank you, sir.
No problem.
So I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So what if the two, both the primary and the standby database are not synchronized? Like probably the standby database was not up to date. It doesn't have all the redo logs information according to your note. What would happen?
Yes, if the standby doesn't have all the redo information, okay, yes, it's not in sync. You can just rely on, the backups, okay? But most of the time, you can have what we call data loss. Because if the standby was not in sync and the primary fell, and transaction will be redirected to the standby. So since the standby do not have the same amount of data as the primary, you won't be able to switch back until you resolve, that gap. So of course you have data loss, okay? And we have what we call, that one depends on you as well. You have a certain responsibility toward that type of scenario. So there are some type of configuration that will prevent data loss, and there's some type of configuration that can cause data loss. And I'll be calling it some type of protection mode. Because depending on depending on the protection mode, you will have data loss or no data loss. Okay? So in that scenario, you will lose data. Okay? Data loss. Does it make sense?
Yep, it does. Thank you.
No problem. Question?
So meaning like the data guard is just like on the stage like where we have like redo log redo 1, redo 2, the group 1, group 2, group 3, and we create like an additional group 1, like let's just say group 1A and group 1B. And when copying the redo entry, and it copies to like the first one, which is a group 1 and the group 1A. So it's like automatical something that when any information that is like data that is coming into the group, it's like being moved to both sides, like the primary and the standby at the same time? Or is there another form of like transferring data from the secondary to the standby?
It works as you just described. Now, you will not have only the data reaching from the online Houdilog file, online Houdilog buffer, from the Houdilog buffer to the online Houdilog file, but the copy of the Houdilog will also go to another location. So now you have 2 or more destinations for your Houdilogs. So that means every single Houdilog, right, will be sent across 2 different locations. The first copy is what you guys know. You go to the online Houdilog file, but the second copy will now go to the other location. It's that second one that will ensure the synchronization between the primary and the standby. So what actually goes to the standby, or what actually makes the primary and the standby to be in sync, are Houdilogs generated from the production. So users will be working on the buffer cache, performing GML, whatever they are doing, right? And those GML will generate redo. Once that redo gets to the Houdilog buffer, 1 copy will go to the online Houdilog file of that database, and the other copy will go to another storage for the standby. And during the architecture, I will tell you where it can go once it goes to the standby. So yes, you will have 2 copies of the same data sent to across 2 different locations.
Thank you, sir.
No problem.
Okay, so I have one last question.
Sure, go ahead, please.
Concerning the scenario you raised about natural disaster, you know, I was discussing with one of my classmates. So when we got to that point, I was confused because I thought you were talking about like maybe the database crashes, or something like that. But when I read further, it talks about flood and all the like. So I believe if the servers they are being probably switched to cloud or exported to cloud, such scenario won't happen.
Okay. Again, as I told you, right, I said that was the primary reason, okay, behind data guard configuration, okay? I did not say that is the only reason. So it means that we did that because of those companies. But now, later on, we started using it for other type of scenario. Yes, a server crash can occur because of multiple reasons, okay? Again, as I said, a server is a machine. It's a hardware, so a hardware can fail. So in that scenario, data guard can also help. If you have anything with a cable, or you can have an outage. If now the light goes off, for any reason, that was not predicted, right? So data guard can help in that scenario. And now, even in the cloud, you still have data guard. The cloud, it doesn't mean it's a cloud as you can understand cloud. The cloud just means that somebody has his own server that just come in and renting those servers. So it means that even their server can have issues. I'm working as a cloud engineer. That means our team manage the hardware behind and also the customer database behind the scene. So it means customers are renting our servers. So, but sometimes we have server crash. It's not because we are a cloud provider that our server will not fail. Sometimes we are dealing with server issues. A lot of them, and sometimes we notice that users are also impacted because of that server issue. We know how to track that. So the cloud doesn't mean that you are exempted from such scenarios. But now, even in the cloud now, you can implement data guard. OCI, you implement data guard. On Azure, they will talk about GR. On AWS, this is also possible. That's why in the beginning I said that the data guard concept is not just for Oracle. Other providers will not call it data guard, but they use same architecture. So you are not exempted whenever you're talking about cloud. So that's why in the cloud now, because they have what they call availability zone or whatever, the copy of your data will also be present in a different data center. They will not tell you most of the time, some of them will not tell you exactly where your data is, but your data is distributed among different geographical locations. That is still to ensure high availability. So that's why data guard is not just a matter of on-premise or a matter of data center. You guys should understand it, because even in the cloud, you guys will face this same concept of data guard. Does it make sense, what I just said?
Yes, it does. It does.
Okay. So just a matter of, it's a machine. A machine can fail. No matter what you do, a machine can fail. A machine can fail.
So this cloud engineer, they actually have a home base, like a physical server.
What? Yes, we have physical server, of course, but that is an information we should not disclose.
So why would I say the data is in cloud?
Yeah, data in cloud, that means what? That means I have my server, and I give you access to my server, and you pay me in a monthly basis. That's what it means. I don't know if it makes sense what I'm saying. It's like you guys now are renting Brontech server. So that means you guys are in Brontech now, you don't own, let me take you don't own those Brontech server. Does it make sense? It's because of your school fees that you have access to some virtual machine on Brontech. Does it make sense? If you were not a student, you will not have access to that. So now that you are accessing that, you can create your databases without me having, okay? If it's a cloud, they will charge you, of course. So now you can create databases on top of my server. You can install Oracle software on top of my server. I'm the one owning those servers, not you. But now, you don't care about what will happen to my server. I'm the one to make sure that my server is well maintained and my server is highly available and performant. So that is how the cloud works. Cloud is not like the cloud you guys understand. You guys hear of cloud. No, cloud, it just means that you don't have to bother about creating a physical location to store physical machine. Somebody can just create a company from his home now, from his house, from his apartment. You just need a laptop. That's it. Because you don't need to store data in your apartment. Somebody else will take care of, someone else will take care of that. But what you have to do in reverse is just for you to ensure maybe the security between your laptop and that one and that location. And maybe you also have to ensure that your data is accessible from your laptop. And in return, you'll be paying based on the amount of resources you are using. If you are using more CPU, you pay more. If you are using more storage, you pay more. So it depends. So that is how it works, basically. Whatever you understand, you hear of cloud stuff. Okay. So now in the cloud now, you don't need, okay, you don't need a bigger team. That's where all the companies are going now. A lot of companies are, that's what is happening. That's a reality. If maybe on the news you don't hear that, but a lot of companies are moving to the cloud now because physical data center, they are losing a lot. That's where people are going. But it doesn't mean the way you will be working is different. You'll be doing the same exact thing if you get hired as an Oracle DBA. The only thing that could change can be maybe the way of connecting. But whatever you do, Arman backup, whatever, you can find some similarities or some additions. Okay? So that's how it works, basically, cloud stuff. All right, any question? All right, so Okay, we talk about, okay, now we have a copy of the production somewhere, right? And that copy is updated whenever the production itself is updated. But we should know that its data guide is not limited only at the level of database. There are some considerations you have to take. One of the first consideration is to take advantage of all the data guide features. You should make sure that everything on the primary or on the source or the production side is the same on the standby side. What do I mean by that? It means that if you are using a Linux, a server from a vendor, Oracle advises you to use the same server for the standby. You will take advantage of better performance and to take advantage of these features. If your server has 16 core CPUs, Oracle recommends you to also have 16 core CPUs for the standby. If you have this type of file system, Oracle recommends you have the same file system on the standby. If the primary has a certain amount of memory and disk, Oracle recommends the same on the standby side. So you can see now that it's not just a level of database, but also got hardware. So it means hardware or software from the primary should be the same on the standby. That's one of the biggest requirements. To take advantage of the data guide feature. The Oracle home of the primary should be equal to the Oracle home of the standby. It's the recommended one, but it is possible to configure on different Oracle home, but Oracle recommends you to use the same Oracle home, the path. Now, another thing, how powerful data guide is. Okay, you may ask me how users can automatically switch from primary to standby, because I said that you can set it up such a way that if the primary fails, users can automatically switch from that location to the standby, or you can do it manually. All right. Now, how will that happen? Application connects to databases using multiple tools, and most of them can use connection strings to connect from whatever application they're using. And in the connection string, it looks pretty similar, okay, to the TNS.Aura. Let me just take an example of an architecture like the TNS.Aura. You guys are familiar with that, where you can find the host, the port, the protocol, the service name. For you guys, you see the service name, right? For now, I will not talk about services for now, because it's a topic I will throw more light on when you get your rack. So for now, you guys see the service name, maybe it's equal to the database name. So it means that your application is using that to connect. Data guard, what you guys should keep in mind with data guard is that the primary and the standby should have the same database name. We see some people doing different database names, but that is not realistic. The primary and standby should have the same database name. What does that mean by that? It means that if my primary database is named ORCL, the standby database name should be ORCL. But they are on different geographical locations, only on different servers, not on the same server, different server. Why do we need to put the same database name? Because we don't want the application user to perform any change on their connection string. On their connection, they already have service name equal, for instance, right? Service name equal ORCL. If you want the transition to be that easy, right? That means you just want them to move from ORCL to another ORCL. But if the other one was not ORCL, the other one you gave a different name to the database name, they won't be able to switch from the primary to the standby because on their connection, on their service name, they specify ORCL. The other option could be for you to ask them to update it and you move them. And that is a waste of time. That's why DataGuard, the primary and the standby have the same database name. But what makes them different is what we call the database unique name. Maybe you guys in the past, the database name has always been equal to the database unique name. But now onward, you should know that the database name is not always equal database DB unique name. That's what will make the difference between the primary and the standby. So with the database name equal database, with the production database name equal the standby database name, and easily allow the application user to switch from the primary to the standby using the service they are connecting to. Again, when it comes to services, I will spend more time in RAC explaining SAC services. For now, let's just understand service like that. Okay, so that is something very important you should consider as well when you are configuring DataGuard. I don't care about where you will get your script from, because I know, and we know each other. We have friends. Even if you don't have friends, you will get it somewhere on Google Canvas. And some of you will go ahead and configure the standby name, different database name, because you just want it to work. Okay, it's working for you. And that's the same thing you will go to the interview room and say that the standby DB name should not be equal to the primary database name. Do you know the configuration that will happen behind? Do you know how difficult it will be behind for the network team to set up DNS changes? You cannot understand it because you don't even know what it means. Now, so for this configuration assignment, I want to, whenever I'm seeing someone's server, I should see the same database name on your server and on your classmate server. Because now your classmate will be your standby and you will be the primary. I don't want someone to do DataGuard on his or her server. It is not realistic. You should do that across server. So if you have a group, my friend, my classmate is my standby, I'm the primary. And I can be his standby or her standby, and he or she could be the primary. So you can play the role primary and standby of each other. So that is that is something you should know. The database name should be the same if you want the whole transition to take place easily. If you don't want the application users to change anything, that is what should happen. So I said that everything should be the same, hardware, everything, right? Database name should be the same. I said that the primary location is called, the source location is called primary, and the target location is called standby, okay? And I said that we can have more than one standby, okay? On 11G, more than 29, so about 29. So I think on 12C is also the same or more than that, so it doesn't matter. So I said they can configure up to 29, but nobody will I've never heard of someone configuring more than 3, more than 2, because it's money and licensing behind. So these are some other benefits. I only talk about disaster, okay? I hope it made sense. Data protection, yes, because since we have now 2 copies of the data, so if the source or the primary is not available, users can access the data through the standby. So it ensures data protection and data availability, okay? Because my users can easily access, okay, the database, okay, from any location. This is the same thing, okay? This one just throws more light on any unforeseen disaster, okay? It's for the data protection. So it also can also help. These are other benefits. Along the way, we started taking advantage of DataGuard to do other operations. But again, the primary reason was not a disaster, but later on, we started taking advantage of DataGuard. And that's why you even see some companies configuring DataGuard, not always for disaster recovery. Most of them, we don't just do that for disaster recovery, but because they want to take advantage of other features of DataGuard. So one of the features is backups. Backups are heavy jobs. They run hours, and they should run every day. What is the first line of defense whenever you are having data lost. That is what everybody had before DataGuard came in. Even now, some people rely on backup. You cannot configure DataGuard on every single database. So that's the first Oracle solution for disaster for high availability, data backup and recovery. So, and those are heavy jobs, very, very resource consuming job, because the backup has to collect all the changes in the database and store it in the backup set daily. I don't care about the backup strategy you are using, but all those metrics, this information should be collected daily and stored somewhere. And later on, will be redirected to the tape. Or maybe that your backup strategy can be to back up directly to the tape without having to go to the disk. So those are heavy operation, expensive operation. So now with DataGuard, you can redirect the backup to the standby. So it means that the users performing the backup the backup can now be scheduled from the standby database, because the standby is the exact duplicate of the primary. So now you can offload this backup job from the primary and you redirect them to the standby. It means by doing that, you are improving the performance of your production, because you just offloaded a heavy job from the production database. Also, DataGuard is a passive-active environment. Active-passive, sorry. It means that only one generates information for the other one. So it means that the data will move only from the primary to the standby. But the data will never move from the standby to the primary unless there's a whole change. So it's a one-way relationship. Primary, standby. Primary, standby. The primary is the one feeding the standby. Okay. So that standby, because it is passive, that means the user don't need to update. It can be active as well. I will talk about that, the type of standby that can be active. So I want to take the standby that where you don't have, where the data is not updated, okay? And you don't need to understand now, okay? I will call that type of standby physical standby or active standby. Please, I will throw more light on it later on. But let's take the example of physical standby or active standby. So now, because those database, users are not updating the standby, you can redirect the backups to the standby and you can schedule your backup from there. Now, the example of active standby, this first type of standby I will throw more light on, which is open in read-only mode, for instance. You can redirect read-only queries to that standby. So if you have any SQL statement that do not need to update a table, just need to query data from a table, you can redirect to the standby. Because you have some reporting jobs, big jobs as well, that are resource consuming and running on a production, causing wait event. Because whenever you have a big query, right, of course, it can cause cache misses. You guys know that. It can cause cache misses, all those stuff. Bringing a lot of blocks to the buffer cache, that can increase the amount of I/O, the CPU, and it can shorten, okay, a lot of memory can be used if you have a big query, a query that contains subqueries or a query that contains join and other stuff. So those are quite expensive. So if you have a SQL statement now that do not need to update the data, you can just send it to an active standby. They can run from there. So you just offloaded the data, the production database from those type of transactions, and you will have a better performance. That's even one of the solutions as well for high concurrencies in the environment. That's one of the solutions. If you can configure a standby, all those big jobs that do not need to update the data, you can redirect them to the standby. Data warehouse is applicable a lot in data warehousing. So you can see now that not just that, apart from natural disasters, it can be used for something else. It can also be used for testing purpose. See, it's no longer like the production and the dev and the test environment or QA environment where you have to perform or refresh before you test the code. Let's assume, okay, you have performance issue in the production. Okay, you notice that, oh, I need to partition a table or I need to create an index. What you have to do is what? To make it realistic, normally it has to be tested in a low environment before you guys decide to implement on the production. Correct? So for it to be implemented in a low environment, you have to refresh that low environment so that the data in the low environment is closer to the amount of data in the production to make the testing more realistic. So that means you have to plan the refresh. You have to schedule that job. Make sure it succeeded before you test it. It can take days or weeks before you finally test that code or that implementation you wanted to do, or that new patch you want to apply on the production. So if the standby, because the standby do not have any impact on the production, it means that if I messed up the standby, right, my production will never be impacted. Why? Because it's active. So the data is coming only from the production to the standby. The data is never coming, it's never going from the standby to the production. So I can be testing now my code on the standby side. If either a physical standby or active or snapshot, I can be doing my testing there. So you see now that it even is the testing phase of your, okay, because you don't need to refresh. The standby is already in sync with the primary. So you can just go ahead and do your testing. If you messed up that standby, you will build it again, or you fix the problem. But users on the primary won't be affected. So you can see how important it can also be used for testing purposes as well, not just for disaster recovery. Okay. So it can also be used for automatic gap detection and resolution. What's the gap? A gap is, as one of the classmates asked, if the primary and standby are not in sync. That's what it means, a gap. So it means the standby is missing from some information from the primary. DataGuard has that capability. If that archive lock exists, it automatically resolve it for you. We have a set of background processes taking care of that for you. And we talk about those processes. It also ensures automatic hold transition. As I told you, right, you can decide to perform the whole you can decide the whole transition can be done automatically if you want to, or manually. It means if you want to, you can make transactions to automatically switch from the primary to the standby in case the primary server is affected for any reason. You can make it happen. Or if you want to, you can do it manually. And I can tell you that you new JBA, you will most likely say, oh, let me do it automatically so that I don't bother. I can just be sleeping and make it happen. So when something happens, user are just redirected to the standby and I'm good to go. But not always the environment do like that. I know a couple of friends where they do the failover manually. That means the automatic route transition manually, not automatically. Why is it so dangerous to be doing stuff automatically? Because even a short outage of 1 second or 2 seconds can will trigger the automatic hold transition. Even a small outage of 1 second, 2 seconds, that means the line just goes up and come back. DataGuard will trigger the hold transition. The hold transition can take more seconds than those 2 seconds. And the amount of resources allocated for that to take place, it can even be more expensive than if you could have just waited those 2 seconds and everything can come back to normal. And sometimes some people perform maintenance on a server, and on purpose, they shut down the server, they restart the server. That is planned. The GBA will stop the database and they will do the maintenance. So you don't want those deployment or whatever they will do at the OS level. Once the server is rebooted, automatically you have a whole change. That might not be what you want. So you may decide the environment will have what we call some alarm deploy on the server, so that if the database goes down or maybe it was not blacked out, the GBA will receive ticket. Okay, if it was not blacked out, the GBA will receive ticket, and at least you will be aware of the fact that the database went down because of this maintenance activity that's taking place now. Or you can enable blackout, work along with the team that's performing the deployment, work with them, shut down the database as per their request. And once they're done with their deployment or whatever they are doing, you bring the database back up. You don't need to do a failover or switchover because you are aware of the change. You are prepared for that. So automatic role transition is good, but it's not applicable everywhere because there are some scenarios that are not working for with that.
Second question.
Yes, sir.
What could cause a gap?
Multiple reasons can cause, multiple things can cause a gap. Multiple. One of the common, we can have a network outage. Means that the network between the primary and the standby network issue, right? So it can fail anytime. Because of that, the data will not travel from one location to another one. It could be that maybe you perform a change on one server and you do not perform the same change on the standby server. And that can cause a gap. Let me take an example. I told you guys that the disk you have, if you add a disk, let's assume you add a disk on the primary server, like this example. You add a disk on the primary server and you create a new table space. That table space goes to that disk. If you don't add the same disk on the standby server, that table space won't be created on the standby server. It means that whenever the user is updating the data on the primary server, that data will never go to the standby server because there is no similar architecture. The architecture on the standby is not the same as the one on the primary. You can also have maybe corruption issues. Maybe the password file can be corrupted on the standby. It can cause it. Maybe the wallet is corrupted. The wallet is corrupted. So because of that, the background process that's responsible to apply, we do to the standby, stop working. Maybe the disk is full. The mount point is full on the standby side or primary side. If the mount point is full, right, the location that you accept the redo on the standby side is full. Of course, the standby won't be able to apply anything. Multiple reasons. Just pick a few of them, understand them, and make them your scenario. Make sense?
Okay, yeah, it's good.
All right. So I just talk about the recommendation. Same memory, same processor, same CPU, same file system, same Oracle home. Advisable, right? But it's not mandatory. Okay. Same operating system, I already talk about it. Okay. Also, same disk, if you have some disks added to the one server, the same disk should be added to the standby server as well. Now, let's jump to the data guard component. Data guard component, this is just an example of one primary and one standby. It's applicable if you have more than one standby as well. So you have physical component and logical component. Physical component are physical servers, right? So you have the servers. On top of those servers, you install the Oracle software, right? So those are physical components. Logical components are actually those components that ensure data synchronization between the primary and standby. Because I told you guys now that this is not just a regular clone, but this clone now is frequently updated with the data coming from the primary. So now the set of services responsible for that are logical components. So now we have a log shipping service. That means this component, the component under log shipping service are responsible for shipping the data coming from the primary directly to the standby. And there's another component responsible for reading those data from a particular location and applying it to the standby, so that every time data is generated here, it can go through these services and be applied here. So these are logical components: log shipping service and log apply service. And physical component, production server and standby server. All right. So this is something you guys should understand. This is the architecture of Oracle DataGuard. It is applicable on 11G, 12C, 18C, or whatever version you deal with, container or non-container. So rack or single instance or standalone. So it's something you should understand. You should understand how it works in the background. So you are familiar with this architecture here on the left. You guys know that on any database, Oracle database, right? Or any regular single instance, you have a buffer cache, memory stock, a memory, FGA, PGA, and all those stuff you guys know. So users update or make blocks dirty from the buffer cache. So once a block is changed, is updated or deleted or insert data in a block, that GML transaction generates redo data. Those redo will go to the redo log buffer. And from the redo log buffer, there's a log writer process that will read from the redo log buffer, that is a circular buffer, and write to the online redo log files. And if archive log is configured, there will be an archival process to read from the online redo log to the archive redo logs. This is what you know. But now you can see new component you might not be familiar with. This is the archive, okay? Maybe you are not familiar with the other component. Now with DataGuard, when you set up DataGuard, okay, you are setting up all these other logical components and also this physical location, because this one is already there. So you are just trying to set up this logical component, this storage, and also this physical component. Now you have one of the these are what I call the log shipping service. The shipping service ensured by the log writer network service and the remote file server, and the apply service is ensured by either the MRP or the LSP. So let me explain first of all what is LNS and what are LNS and RFS. So that when the redo gets to the redo log buffer, the LNS process can read data, can read the redo log, okay, either from the redo log buffer or redo log files. So the LNS process has two places where it can read from. But we now read the same data, okay? Read the data either from the redo log buffer or the redo log file. So it means that one copy of the redo will come here and the LNS will get another copy if you set up one standby. If you have more than one standby, that means you have one additional copy if you have two standby, for instance, right? One copy for the first standby, another copy for the second standby. But for this example, we have only one standby. So you can set up only one, only, okay. You can set up one additional log archive destination. So now this LNS process, we get a copy of the Hudu. This LNS is able to cross the network, travel the network, and send it to the RFS. Let's note that the LNS is found on the primary server and the RFS on the standby server. So the RFS will never come to the primary. So when the LNS captures reads from either the Redo buffer or the online Redo files, you will send the Redo across the network to the remote file server. So now this remote file server now, we write what it receives from the Redo from the log writer network service. You will write it now either to the online Redo to the standby Redo file or the archive Redo file. Note as well, pay attention to this. Standby Redo file are not the same as online Redo file. The standby database will still have its online Redo file somewhere else. So the assignment for you guys, as I gave in the morning, is what are the benefits of using standby Redo file? I don't want the answer now, even if you read it somewhere. But Monday, I want you guys, someone to tell me exactly what's the usage of standby Redo file. That's a question I want an answer by Monday. The answer of this question by Monday. So the RFS we have, if you configure this, because it's optional, it's not mandatory for you to have standby Redo file, but it's mandatory to have archive Redo file. So that means if you configure this standby Redo file, the RFS will write to that. If not configured, the RFS will write to the archive Redo file. And with that said, if this one is configured, the apply process, which is the MRP or the LSP, will come and read from this and apply to the standby. If this one is not configured, the apply process will go and read from the archive Redo file and apply to the standby. So the shipping service stops when you write to the online, to the standby Redo file or archive Redo file, and the apply service is when you read from either of those locations and just apply to the standby database. Okay, and if you guys can see here, we have two processes here. I will say that the first process is for physical standby, and the second process is for logical standby. So managed recovery process and logical standby process. And you can see from the standby that we put report and backup. It means we can take backup, we can run our reporting jobs from the standby now. We no longer need to schedule those jobs on the production. So data move from the online Redo log, a copy of it will be sent, will be read, will be captured by the LNS process. The LNS will send it to the RFS process. The RFS will write those Redo either to the online Redo log either to the standby Redo log, if configured, or the archive Redo log. And the MRP will come and read from the standby Redo log, if configured, or from the archive Redo log and apply to the standby database. And that is how the data moves from the primary to the standby. Now you can see an arrow here and see the other one, gap resolution. If the primary and the standby are not in sync, there's a set of processes that will take care of the automatic gap resolution. So I will talk about the file client and the file server that will initiate the automatic gap resolution. Once those components will identify a gap, the file client will request the archival process to send the missing information to the RFS, and the RFS can apply it back again to the standby. That's why you see this arrow. All right. So this is the architecture. You all should know how it works. So assignment is, what are the benefits of using standby RedoLock? So the primary can also have standby RedoLock. It's not mandatory, but it can also have standby RedoLock. And you should tell me why. So by knowing the benefit of standby RedoLock, you understand why it's also important to have standby RedoLock on the primary server. So that means primary has its own standby RedoLock and also online RedoLock, and standby also has its own standby RedoLock and its own online RedoLock. Okay, any question? Any question, guys?
Yes, I have a question.
Please go ahead.
Okay, you say when the changes, when the insect. Okay, let me first of all ask the question to clear my doubt before I ask my question. Does a select statement generate redo?
It depends on the select. If under the select we have an update in the select, it can generate, right?
Okay, so if
You
a
have a
select,
GML in it, if the subquery, right? If the
yeah.
sub is a GML, we generate redo, of course. Yes, it's possible.
Okay, so if the changes is being made in the primary database and it goes to the RedoLock, and see, we know that the log writer is a fast writer, and my doubt is, would this LNS be able to be in speed or to be in line with the log writer?
As soon as the redo is written to the RedoLock buffer, the log writer network service can also capture straight from there. You don't see the arrow?
Yeah, I see it, but my question is, would they guys simultaneously, like, is it faster like the log writer?
It's fast enough. You can see you can configure more than one. So if you see that it's very slow, you can add more LNS. You see N here? You can add more LNS processes to speed up the capture process. They are fast as well, okay? It also goes with configuration. You should have a good network. A good network will speed up LNS operations. If the network is bad, the LNS will take more time to send the data to the RFS. But it's fast enough. I cannot tell you it's faster than the log writer, but I know it's fast enough. And when I will be talking about protection mode, I will give you the relationship between the redo that has to be written to the standby and any transaction. I will tell you now that there are some type of configuration that you can set up such a way that if the redo that was created here is not applied to the standby, any transaction here won't be committed because they have to wait till the redo is applied to the standby. Okay, so there's a relationship between the redo going across the network and the transaction happening in the primary. But when it comes to the speed, I cannot tell you the LNS is faster than the log writer. I don't know myself. Okay. Any question?
So, sir, we also know that the remote files, server, or the remote file server, it copies the archive logs too, right?
No, the remote file doesn't copy. You can see the arrow. It's a one way. It's not two ways. See well, it's one way. So this process can just write to. You don't see an arrow going up like this. So the RFS cannot read from either of these locations. It can just write to this location.
No, I'm saying from the primary database. I'm seeing from the archive log that an arrow from the archive log is pointing to the remote file server.
Yes, the remote file server can request from the archival process, and the archival process can send to the remote file server.
Okay.
File server will not read from the archive files. Okay, it's just a request. Just tell me, hey, send me those data, and it will send it to you. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Just a communication. This arrow doesn't mean it's reading from this. No, it's not reading from this one. Just talking to this, or just asking the archiver to send, and the archive will read from this archive data files and send the missing information directly to the remote file server. Okay?
Okay.
Any question? Any question, guys? Okay, so we should
Sir, excuse me, sir. I have a question.
I have a question, sir.
The first person who said, excuse me, please.
Yeah. You said before, if under the Primero database you additional like more memory, and you create maybe the table space for that one, and the standby database, that information now go for the standby database. But in that case, why is not make information go off there? Because you don't have enough memory, and you don't have the same architecture and the standby database, or the LNS is not read through the redo buffer.
I'm not talking about the memory, I talk about the disk. A disk is
the disk. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it's a disk. So whenever you create table spaces, whatever, they reside on a disk. They reside in a physical location. So I was saying that if that disk is also not created on the standby side, that table space won't be created there, because that a similar disk was not added to the standby. Does it make sense?
Okay.
I'm not talking about me, I talk about disk. So you have to create the same disk on the standby server.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
I have a question, sir.
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Okay. You say that sometimes the primary can become the standby, right?
In case, yes, if the primary failed, right?
Yes.
It's a whole transition. Yes, the primary becomes standby and the standby becomes primary. Correct.
Okay. Why is it possible when the primary don't have the RFS and the standby too don't have the LNS? Why is it possible?
It will be possible because Oracle will automatically allocate that architecture whenever there's a role change. So when the primary becomes standby, all those set of processes will be allocated, will be assigned to that primary.
Okay.
So whenever you're having a whole change, right, it means that whatever was belonging to the old standby will now be provided to the new standby. Whatever was belonging to the old primary will now be provided to the new primary.
Okay.
Does it make sense?
Yes.
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 From those resources.
Thank you. Okay.
No problem. Questions?
I have a question. I just want to clarify on something.
Yes, sir.
Yes, from the beginning, you said on the primary, you said the informations have been on the redo buffer here, have been sent to the LNS, and the LNS transfers the information over to the RFS, right?
Correct.
So these same informations are being transferred from the redo buffer with the help of the log writer to the online redo logs, and which are being sent down to the archive redo logs. So I want to know, like, in what case or what scenario what type of information can be missing that the RFS will come to request from the archive log.
Okay. So,
because why I'm asking, I believe the same information which are being sent down here are the same information being transferred to the LNS. So I was just doubting.
Yes, that's very, very true. Very good question. Whenever the data is crossing a network, first of all, data can be lost while crossing a network. Why? Because if a network is highly busy, okay, a lot of transactions are taking place over the network, it can slow down other transactions, and some transactions can be lost over the network. It also depends on the type of traffic, the type of protocol you are using. Some people can use UDP, TCP protocol, other networking stuff, but some transactions can be lost sometime across the network. Some data can be lost across the network. So even data can also be corrupted when it goes to the standby. So it means even though the data was written here, and maybe for any reason, right, the MRP did not apply it because it got corrupted once it was written here. Maybe somebody opened it, or maybe something happened to the standby. The data is corrupted, so it's no longer useful. In that scenario, the standby has to request that data from primary. Does it make sense? So that the primary can send it again to the standby and it can be applied back to the standby. So data corruption can cause that. Okay, maybe another reason can be that, okay, this location is full for any reason, okay, and the data was supposed to be written, but since it's full, it won't be written, so there will be a failure. So now what happened is, you will come now and initiate the automatic recovery by yourself. So you can now allow, after you added more space, the standby can request now that missing data from the primary. We should know something. The apply process is sequential. So it means that we do all know that we do have sequences, okay? We have some sequence. So if we have, for instance, redo 1, redo 2, redo 3. If redo 1 is not applied, the standby, redo 2 won't be sent to the standby. So you cannot skip one redo, okay, and go to the other redo. So that's what can cause log gap. Maybe the redo that was supposed to be applied to the standby is lost. Because of that, other redo will wait till you resolve that gap before they can also be sent across the network to the standby location. Okay, so there are multiple reasons you can lose it during the transit, or can be corrupt. It can get corrupted, or maybe for any reason, maybe the storage is full, or maybe it's also possible for the redo to be on the standby location, but not apply yet. So let's assume that the redo is here. Okay, the redo is written normally, okay? Nothing happened to the redo. It's written either to the online or to the archive. But for any reason, this process is not doing its job. Or maybe for any reason, this database went down or fell for any reason, okay? So you, the GBA, you will come and resolve this issue. Once you resolve this issue, and once you bring back this process up, this process can come back and start reading from where it stopped last time and pick up the new data and apply. So the automatic gap resolution doesn't always mean that you always have to go to the primary to get it. You can also perform the automatic gap resolution if the data is already on the standby server. Okay, so there are multiple scenarios that can trigger the automatic gap resolution, detection resolution. I don't know if it makes sense.
All right, thank you.
No problem.
Sir.
Yes, sir.
So back to my previous question, because he asked a question that goes back to what I was thinking. What if the LNS could be running behind a log writer? Could it be one of the reasons
It can cause gap, yes, because if the LNS is running is very slow, it can cause a gap. So that means if you query here, you query the number of archive log present here, the number of archive log present here, maybe you can see a difference somewhere because maybe there's a network outage and the LNS is taking time to send data across, or maybe the bandwidth is occupied. Let's assume that in parallel, there's an export job running, okay? The export, we use a lot of network because exporting, you are going across the network while you are doing the data form export, for instance. So that can even affect the network speed. So in that scenario now, the LNS can take more time to send the data to the RFS. And you can note, if you query, you can notice that at that specific time, the standby is lagging behind the primary database. So it's possible for this, or it's possible to have for the LNS speed to be affected because of network, especially. It's possible.
So what if there is a backup? What if there is a backup? Arman is doing a backup on a primary database and at the same time deleting the archive log, and the so I guess when gap resolution one occur, the archive log will be missing. Does it mean we're gonna lose data?
With data guard, you won't be doing backup on the primary again. Backup will be taking place on the standby.
Okay.
So even if you have to do whatever delete input on your backup, you are not deleting any input from the primary. You are doing everything now on the standby. Does it make sense? That's one of the benefits of data guard. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying.
Just come again, please. I didn't catch it.
The backups are now running from the standby, no longer on the primary, because you just say that if I run Arman backup on the primary and delete archive log after that, whatever you say later on after that. And I imply that you are no longer taking backups from the primary. Now you'll be taking backup on the standby.
Okay.
So it means if the redo is not on the standby, then the backup will not capture that redo. But if it's there, the backup Arman will capture that. If it's not there, Arman will not capture. That's how simple it is. Does it make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
No problem. Questions? Okay. So, we go straight, okay? There won't be break. We go straight to we finish in 30 minutes. Okay, there's no question. So, let's jump to something else. Now, well, do I talk about this one in the morning class? Let me see. Yes, I think I talk about this. Yeah. If not, anyway, the ask question Monday we see. Maybe I skip this one without seeing. All right, so we have 4 major types of standby. We have the default one whenever you are configuring figure, logical, you can configure snapshot, you can configure active. So a physical standby is the exact copy of the primary. So whatever you find on the physical, so exact block-to-block copy of the production. Block-to-block. It means the same amount of data, identical copy of the production. This physical standby is open in mount stage. It cannot be open in read-write, in read-only or read-write mode. It will be in mount stage. So that's why you can run backups here. There is no change that can take place here, right? Unless you are at a GPA. Users cannot access a database that is in state. Users at physical standby is the regular type of standby a lot of companies have.
Gatan.
Okay. And for I'm breaking. Yeah.
Yes. You're breaking.
Yes.
I think you are the one breaking.
Okay. Sorry if I'm breaking. I don't know. Yeah, I'm a bit closer to the computer. So what I was saying is, these are the 4 types of standby you can have. Physical, that's a default block-to-block copy. Okay. It's the same as a production. The difference is that it is open in mount stage. The logical is open in read-write, but it might not be the same as the production. That's easy to understand. Why? Because since this one is open in mount stage, users cannot update the data, right? Users cannot change the data because the data file are not open. We all know the startup sequence of the database. If the database is not open, data file won't. If the database is not open in read-write mode, data file won't be open. So it means that you cannot update the data in this physical standby. So, but logical standby are open in read-write. So we call it logical copy of the production, not block-to-block copy of the production, because since it is open in read-write mode, the user can perform a change here. You can decide to come here and add it, an index and add the table. So, and that can make that logical standby be different from the primary. So it's an option. You also have snapshot standby, open in read-write, but snapshot standby are mostly temporal. You will not see, you cannot use it for long. So actually a snapshot standby is just a physical standby you converted into snapshot for maybe for testing purpose, okay? Maybe you want to test a brand new application. You don't want to test it on the production, you test it first on the snapshot standby. Maybe you want to test a code, maybe you want to test a new patch. You can test it from the snapshot because it's open in read-write. But once you are done with your testing, you come back to the physical standby. And whatever was performed here will be discarded. It won't be saved anywhere. So this one is purely temporal, but this one can be used permanently. So a company can decide to use logical standby, or you can switch from physical to logical standby, maybe for an upgrade, or maybe for a maintenance activity, and you come back as well to physical, or you can decide to stay to logical. It's possible as well. Okay, so it's possible to stay to configure a logical standby and stay and keep using it all the way, but you cannot configure, you cannot use snapshot standby forever. It is temporal, purely temporal. And the next type of standby is active standby. This one is open in read-only mode. This one is same as physical standby, same. So it's also a block-to-block copy of the production. So whatever you found here is the exact thing you found in the production. But the difference is that it's open in read-only mode. But active standby also comes with some additional feature that physical standby do not have. But in order to get those features, it's not free. You have to pay an additional money to Oracle in order to get those features, such as automatic block detection and resolution. Now, if you have an active standby, automatically Arman can detect a corrupted block and resolve it for you. If you have active standby now, automatically you can perform incremental backup strategy. If you have active standby now, you can implement what we call fast sync to speed up applied services. So you will see a description of each of these type of standby somewhere below here. I think above here. You can find them right here. So just go ahead and read. Question on this? Okay, let me finish, then we ask the final questions. So we have two more, just 2 slides to complete these 2 slides, and that's it for today. So those are the type of standby we have. Okay. Now we have what we call protection mode. Protection mode is actually, it is how you want your data to be available, and also it also affects the performance of the database. So depending on the protection mode you will choose, you will have either a better performance or you will enhance data security. So you have to choose one of them. And we have 3 protection modes provided by Oracle. We have maximum performance, maximum availability, and maximum protection. The default protection mode is maximum performance. Now, let me tell you how DataGuard works so that you understand this protection mode. I explained how the Redo was transferred from the primary to the standby, but it doesn't stop when the MRP or the LSP has applied the Redo to the standby. That's not where it stops. Even after the MRP has applied the Redo to the standby, right? That MRP has to inform the RFS, and the RFS has to just inform the production database that that Redo that was sent across the network has been applied to the standby. So the RFS has to inform the production to provide that information to any transaction running on the primary server. What do I mean by that? It means that, let's assume a user here issue insert into scott.emp. 1 row inserted. That's what you guys will see. 1 row inserted. A Redo will be generated, and a copy of that will go to the online Redo logs, and another copy will go to the standby. Now the user issue commit. Depending on the protection mode you choose, that commit will take place immediately or may not take place immediately. For maximum performance, even though you were able to perform a GML and the Redo is sent, the commit will be completed as soon as the log write the Redo is reaching from the Redo log buffer to the Redo log file. What do I mean by that? It means that in maximum performance mode, the production server or the primary server doesn't care about the Redo being applied to at least one of the standby. So it means that for the primary server, right, if that Redo that was generated here is can just be written to the disk as usual. If that Redo is not even sent to the standby, or if that Redo is lost in the transit, my primary database will not care about it. Because in maximum performance, as you can understand performance, we want to prioritize the performance of the primary database. We don't want the performance of the primary database to be affected because of the DataGuard configuration. So, and because of that, primary and standby may not be in sync. Because if the data is lost and the primary can keep functioning without it, it means that sometimes you can miss some data on the standby, but the primary will keep functioning. That is why you will see here async, because at some point, the primary database might not be in sync with the standby. And the other one, no affirm. As I said, right, whenever a Redo is reaching to the standby, normally the RFS will come and acknowledge that it has been written. But with the maximum performance, the production doesn't care about any confirmation from the RFS. So it means if the RFS comes to confirm or it doesn't come, the production will keep functioning. So in the maximum performance, you will see that a lot of companies use it. Why? Because we want the production to always be, we don't want the production performance to be affected by anything. So with that, RFS come and confirm or doesn't come and confirm, my primary will keep functioning. Users can still commit their transaction. They can still roll back their transaction. They can still do whatever they were doing before, even better. So that's why you will see maximum performance, async, no affirm, because the primary and the standby may not be in sync. I'm not saying that they should not be in sync. The ideal scenario is for them to be in sync. But in case of any issue, the primary will keep functioning without considering that major impact. So the primary will still functioning, even if the standby is not in sync, the primary will keep functioning without having any performance impact. And in case anything happens, or in case the RFS is taking time to come and give the acknowledgement, the primary database won't care about it. The primary database will keep functioning as usual. That is maximum performance. Now, unlike maximum performance, you have the second one, maximum availability. You can see here now that instead of async, we have sync, affirm, net timeout. So for this one, you guys can know that we have less data protection. That is normal, right? Because let's take a scenario that this one are not in sync and I lost the primary. Of course, my transaction will be redirected to the standby and I will have lost those data that were not applied. So maximum performance provides less data protection, but it prioritizes the performance of the primary database. The second one is maximum availability. Maximum availability, whenever you perform a GML, okay, let's take an example with GML. The redo is generated, it is sent, RFS apply, the MRP come and read and apply. If the RFS process doesn't come and give an acknowledgement to the primary database, transaction won't be able to commit that, users won't be able to commit their transaction. So if you issue a commit statement, it won't be completed because the primary has to wait until the RFS process come and confirm that the redo has been applied. So you can now see that the performance of my primary database can be affected because it has to wait for someone to come and say, hey, redo has been applied, you can proceed. So it relies on the RFS process. It can be affected by that. But what is good about maximum availability is that there's a parameter you guys will set up or we guys may not set up. By default, it is 300 seconds net timeout. The primary will not wait forever. Let's assume that for any reason, the redo was not applied. Since it's not applied, the RFS will not come. The RFS is waiting for it to be applied. With maximum availability, the primary will not wait forever. So after the net timeout parameter you set, after that time, the primary will ignore any response from the RFS and will keep functioning without considering any feedback from the RFS. So it will now keep functioning, it will now function like the maximum performance. So it won't care anymore, okay? It won't care again about whether the redo has been applied to the standby or not. But initially, it will care about it. It will wait up to the timeout. The timeout is the threshold. So you wait for the RFS to come. If the RFS is taking too much time and it passes the timeout, then the primary database will keep functioning and will ignore any feedback from the RFS. Okay, but you can see now that it will ensure data protection at certain level. Because since it's waiting for data to be applied to at least one of the standby, it means that it is caring about the data that is transferred over the network. It's caring about it. Doesn't want the data to be lost in the transit, but it won't care about it forever. It will stop caring about the data if the RFA is taking longer to come and confirm that that has been applied. And the last protection mode is maximum protection. It is also the same thing, sync affirm. There's also a timeout somewhere. And maximum protection, once you perform your GML, the redo is generated, okay? One copy go here as well. This one should send the other copy and the same procedure. Now, with maximum protection, the primary database before the transaction commit, we also have to wait for an acknowledgement of the RFS. We also have to wait for the RFS to come and say, hey, it's done, before the transaction can commit. Now, if the RFS is taking longer, more than a timeout, instead of ignoring the RFS and keep functioning, okay, like maximum performance or like maximum availability does, the primary database will go down, will crash. So because it cannot afford, it cannot run without, it cannot work, it cannot function, okay, if it's not in sync with at least one of the standby. It should be in sync with at least one of the standby. That's why for maximum protection mode, we recommend you to have a very strong network to ensure data is well transferred, and also it's advisable to have at least 2 standby, so that if one standby is not in sync, maybe the other one can be in sync. Maybe, okay, can be in sync. So these are the 2 protection mode you should know, and you have description right here. Any question? I'm done for today. Any question before I round out this session?
Quick question, sir. Is there a best protection mode, or it just depends on?
It depends on the environment. It depends on the type of application. But frequently used one is these 2, because these 2 is very risky. But this is the best one to ensure no data loss. So you can see now that this one can have data loss, right? If the primary stop caring about the standby, it can have data loss. But these 2 are frequently used. Okay, so me, I've been exposed to both. I'm still exposed to both. So some databases, some application, because they are prioritizing the performance of the production, they want the production to always be available. They are launching very huge job in the production, active production. We don't want transaction to be delayed. Okay, I'm not sure you customer, you'll be able to try to check out from a website, and it takes 5 seconds or 10 seconds before that button says completed. So some applications are like that. We want, okay, the response time should be very low. And we also have some applications that are, prioritizing the availability of the data. So we don't want data to always be available for the user. We don't want data loss. So it depends on the type of application you want, okay? So there's nothing I can tell you is best or not best. Any other question?
So I have a question.
Yes, sir, please.
Could you go back to page 8, please? Page 8. Okay. During at the time when the standby redo logs are being applied to the database, so is it gonna regenerate another redo logs or another data file?
No, when the redo is applied, if you configure the standby redo, okay, and it has been applied to the standby. A copy of that standby will still go to the archive log. Okay.
Would it generate another redo logs?
Oh, without generating another redo log?
Yeah.
No. You know that redo, okay, it will be applied to the data file, and it will be like a restore that will be performed on the standby database. So actually, right, it's like a redo is reaching to a storage. A redo is reaching to the data file. So that means the data file of the standby are updated. Now, how can you? It goes to the data file. Now, if somebody is at the data file at the standby level, and if that standby is updatable, yes, you can generate redo if that standby is updatable. But if that standby is not updatable, you will not generate additional redo from this redo that came from the standby redo file. What do I mean by that? If the standby database is a physical standby or active standby, the redo that's coming here to the standby redo file, okay, you cannot issue a JML because the database is not allowing any JML operation. So it means that that redo will not generate an additional redo data, okay? But if the standby database is in read-write mode, once the redo is reaching to the data file of the standby, now any JML you will issue on that standby database can come and get this redo and change it and generate other redo that will go now to the redo log files instead of going to the standby redo logs. Now those redo now will go to the redo log files of the standby database. So it depends on the open mode, or it depends on the type of standby of the depends on the type of standby basically, whether it's physical or logical or active. I don't know if I answer your question.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. No problem. Any question? Any question? All right. So for Monday, we come Monday just to run the session, and I will provide. I think Monday. What do I have again on Monday? I think that should run the session. But I only want a group to be prepared on this. This is the assignment. The assignment is valid for everybody, every one of you. And I can tell you that even today I helped in an interview and we had this question. I had someone in an interview today. We have these two. We had question number 2, number 4, number 5. Also, we have a question on this, a little bit of this. So it means that if I assign this, if I give you assignment to someone, to a group, it doesn't mean that they should be the only one to do it and you should just cross your hand and wait for them. Otherwise, they will bring you script and they will not understand what they did, how it works. So it should be done by everybody, by all groups. But now only one group will come and present. Okay, so I will pick a group today to take care of data guide. And they will deliver the product. They will start presenting on the 5th. And they can complete the 7th. And the next Friday, if you have time, we can introduce the next project. Okay. So this group is already as presented. So since we have a lot of questions there, so I have to pick one of these 2 groups, either this one or this, to present data guide. I know where I will put this group. I know. So for data guide configuration, Let me see between these two. Let me take care of the other one. Okay, let me give it to this group. This group will take care of the assignment, and by October 5th, yeah, they should present, they should come and implement, okay, Oracle Data Guide. And you guys will most likely start at 5, as usual. Start and till you are done. Even if maybe you are not there, you can proceed up to 9 p.m. if you want to. Anyway, you have 2 days. You have 2 days. If you cannot finish the first day, you have 2 days. The 4th, the 5th, and the 7th. So Silver Spring will take care of that.
Just try to be sure that you do.
Any question for me? I think you are done for today.
Your what?
Any question?
As the time I saw you pointing the 4th. That's on Sunday.
I put the 4th?
No. When you were pointing at the calendar.
No, it's the 5th. I put here the 5th, right?
Okay.
It should be the 5th. Okay. So Monday 5th. So they have time to understand the concept because I will close the concept Monday. So they definitely have 1 full week to work on it because next Friday we don't have class. Okay. Maybe Wednesday I will just come maybe to help those who started the configuration and they are struggling. You can assist them. You guys, it depends on you. If you guys want to request a Friday class for 1 or 2 hours just to look at people issues, we can do that for next Friday. But I will not schedule a class for next Friday. So it depends on you. If you feel like you started the configuration and you are stuck within the week and you need a class Friday, so that we all can look at your issue, we can do that. Okay? So, but next week, just Monday I'll be teaching, but Wednesday I won't be teaching. So I can help you, or maybe I can even cancel the Wednesday class if I see that is you. If for me it's useless, I may cancel the next Wednesday class and put it to Friday, or cancel both Wednesday and Friday. Okay, so but the group has to present it the Monday 5th of October. October 5th. Okay. So yeah. Are you good? All right. Okay, guys. So you enjoy your weekend, and we meet next Monday. Okay, Monday.
All right. Thanks.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thanks.
Quick question. The whole group. Anybody was able to install Enterprise Manager with 12c? Brian.
Patrick.
Yeah, Abilo.
Yeah.
You did?
Man, this data guide is coming with fire. I've not been able to. I've not been able to check about Enterprise Manager. Yeah.
Because he provided the link. I tried to open that link, but it wasn't opening.
No, he just gave that link out of speculation. It's not like it was a question I asked him, so he just gave that link out of recommendation.
Oh, okay.
But, yeah.
Hello, what are you thinking? That cloud means it's safe on the cloud?
But my job for now, boy. That thing has come. Now Samson has come now.
So you think that this cloud will have above like that?
It come like strong.
Cloud has come.
Yes, kind of.
Yeah, because they won't say your data is stored in cloud, and at the end of the day, they have the physical server for all those stuff.
The reality is that it must be stored somewhere physically.
Somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. You can't
So
have
what?
it.
So why the cloud?
Just cloud does
That's
not
a
mean
fact.
cloud as cloud of the way. Cloud might mean that, like he said, cloud might mean just that you don't have the physical location.
Location.
They are the ones who control it. So they use the name cloud.
Bello cloud big cloud.
Bello, you are crazy.
I saw if you
But see, they need to change their name because I was so impressed when I heard about data Oracle 12c cloud stuff.
Cloud stuff, yeah, that's true.
Very impressed.
now you know say na moon it goes on. You want go moon. It's a cloud.
That's scam.
And name them. They just use baby name full.
Baby name the demand. And yeah, Silver Spring, I wish you good luck.
They're gonna be fine though. I mean, there are tons of information out there.
I know.
Yeah, and they will find information about it.
Joe. He's gone.
Bello, I'm right here.
No, I was calling by Joe.
Ah, sorry.
Joseph, now you go. He's gone.